welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and this is our monthly episode with members of the Kankakee County Museum to cover something historic in our county's history. And as most always, we're joined by Jack Klasey and Jory Walters. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Always great fun to be here and cover something interesting, we hope.
Yeah. Oh, well, we always have something interesting to talk about. And I feel like what we're talking about today is something that I hear and see a lot of people talk about in the different Kankakee Facebook groups that exist, and they're always sharing pictures or sharing memories of Hotel Kankakee, and we haven't really covered a hotel, I think, since we talked about Riverview.
Right.
And that's been like a few years ago already. So I thought, well, maybe it's time we get back to hotels. So
Kankakee,
In our survey of vacant lots and what they used to be before, parking lots, what they used to be.
I was every time I'm downtown in a parking lot, I always think, okay, what used to be here?
And there's lots of interesting things that were.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So, where do we get started with Hotel Kankakee, Jory?
Let's do location first.
Okay.
All right. So if you're in downtown Kankakee, you're on Schuyler. You're on where the library, the executive building is. Now that whole block, that side of that block, on the corner, the bottom, when you go down the hill, for Merchant and Schuyler, it sat on the corner. However, before it sat on the corner, this house sat on the corner.
Oh, wow.
Surrounded by business buildings.
Surrounded by business buildings.
I guess that kind of goes back to one of, actually, I think it was the French Heritage Museum episode. We were talking about how there used to be houses a lot closer to downtown.
Yes.
So,
In fact, in the middle of that same block, I have a big mansion with a yard on that block.
oh, cool.
Yes.
So that's how downtown started.
I think
We
that was a
started West
doctor's house. I
Street.
can't remember the name, but I think it was the house that you're talking about, which was about the middle of the block.
Yeah.
On the east side of it was one of the local doctors.
Okay.
So Schuyler Avenue at one time was kind of mixed commercial and residential, as opposed to East Avenue, which was entirely commercial in the first two blocks.
Yeah. So, so you had this house there, and you had the hotel right next to it then?
No.
Or was
No,
it?
they took the
Took its place.
Okay, so they tore down the house to build the
Right.
hotel.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would have been in the mid-1920s. July 15th, 1925 was the groundbreaking, as usual attended by many politicians. Mayor Louis Beckman tossed the first shovel and that sort of thing.
And Len Small, Governor Len Small would have been in office at that time,
1927, he would have been in, or 25, I'm sorry, he would have been in office at that time as well.
right? Was he there for the groundbreaking then?
I don't recall, but he might well have been.
Yeah.
We had a list, I think, of some of the people there, but they most prominently said, the mayor was the... Something there, Jerry?
The little bit of construction.
Oh, okay. For those that aren't seeing the visual of this right now, Jory is showing the construction of Hotel Kankakee and then like the finished product.
Yeah.
We have also a picture of the groundbreaking itself, which
Oh, yeah, I knew we had a picture.
Jory can drop that in place.
Okay.
Breaking of it.
It's interesting, all of the signs on the adjoining building were advertising Powell's Photographic Studio, for example, and
Yeah.
Reichert and Riley's, I think it was electrical.
And LaFond and Hartung, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
What did they do? You remember?
I don't recall.
Can you see in the
I'll
photograph?
take a look in the picture and see. LaFond and Hartung. Our guarantee, give us a trial. Unfortunately, I can't quite make it out.
Yeah.
But the next one is also shopping at the Fair Store, and the Fair Store was over on East Avenue.
Okay.
Kankakee is one of their largest and earliest department stores.
So who built the hotel? Who built Hotel Kankakee?
I am not sure what the ownership of it was, and I don't recall any of the stories that I read, unless Jory's run across it.
I did, and if I can find it, and that one's about the fire, so that's not it.
It was a good-sized building. I think it was 7 stories, and it was and in fact, maybe at that time was the tallest building in town.
Yes. It just says about the, it was a kind of idea of some kind of contractor that Kankakee should have expand their downtown hotel for the traveling businessman and for banquets and parties and meetings. This area was very, very busy back in the day. So if I can find it, I'll share it with you.
I know
that was the idea.
Right. I know it went through several different ownerships
Yes.
over its existence, but I was just curious as to who built it.
Yeah, the only one I can tell for sure was Ralph Francis and his brother, whose name escapes me, that owned it in the 60s.
So at this time, I don't know if this is too hard or broad of a question to ask, but at the time, in 1925, their groundbreaking Hotel Kankakee, there were at least 3 or 4 other hotels in downtown, right?
The major one downtown was Lafayette, which was diagonally across the intersection. It was on the middle of the 200 block of South Schuyler. There were several on East Avenue. I don't think, on the third, I think possibly Faneuil's European Hotel on East Avenue, just north of Station Street, was at one time more toward the 1890s and early 1900s, probably the fanciest hotel in town. But there were other hotels here and there. But the Lafayette was probably, at the time that the Hotel Kankakee groundbreaking took place, was definitely the major hotel in town. They had banquet rooms, and they actually even I think the same year or the year before that, they added another floor on there in order to make it more saleable.
Yeah, right.
I got it.
Okay.
The hotel, first known as Kankakee Hotel, Hotel Kankakee, was built by Ed Tarrant and opened for business in 1926. It catered primarily to commercial travelers long before anyone ever dreamed of an interstate highway or a Holiday Inn at the top of the exit ramp.
Ed Tarrant was one of the major builders in town, Tarrant Construction.
And then Ed Bergeron from 1974 to 78.
Yes, Ed P.
And then George Fish Sr. and George Fish Jr. and Gary Furstenfeld. Apologize for that. Until
Furstenfeld.
Yeah.
All right.
So later on. It did go through a couple of different people.
Yeah, Bergeron is a name I know we've mentioned quite a few times on the podcast.
Just talked about him in the last one, in fact, because we had pictures of him showing the stone barn to the eventual restaurant operators that bought the place.
Yeah, so he was pretty well known in Kankakee's history. So it sounds like they built this in about a year, which to me sounds pretty good.
13 months.
Wow. Because they're talking, this is 7 stories, you said?
Yes.
How many rooms did it?
115.
100, that's right.
That's pretty sized.
Okay.
That's pretty good sized.
I'm going to show you an ad, but I'm going to read a little bit off of it first. It is Kankakee's only new and fireproof hotel. Rooms.
That was a big deal.
I know, but it's so funny. Like anytime you hear those, it's like Titanic, the unsinkable ship, and it sinks, and then
and guess what happened?
A fire.
There it was, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But you could get rooms with toilets and lavatory for $2
a night.
Rooms with bath, $2.50. Weekly and monthly rates, and large and well-lighted sample rooms, fixed meal prices in our dining room, and you could also do private banquets and parties. We have attractive private dining rooms, our Gold Room, Kankakee's most beautiful banquet hall, and seating capacity of 200. The Indian Room,
which was the major restaurant,
has a seating capacity of 125. All of these under the personal supervision of a complete cateress.
So
That's a big hotel.
it's a big hotel. There was
I just love, so it says Hotel Kankakee, and just like she said, there's in slightly smaller letters, but still in a big headline, like it says, Kankakee's only new and fireproof hotel. I love the marketing.
I love these ads back in the day. They're so just direct and in your face and tell you exactly what it is you're going to get.
Yeah.
They also advertised themselves as as Illinois' finest downstate hotel.
Okay. I think I remember hearing that too when I was reading up on it as well. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jack.
Oh, no problem. I was just going to say that the building of the hotel was part of a 1920s building boom downtown that was absolutely incredible. Over that 10-year period, there were either 7 other major buildings in the downtown area. In 1923, Lasser's Furniture Store on the 100 block of South Schuyler was a 4-story building. That in 1962, that was one of the major downtown fires in Kankakee, and actually endangered the hotel, which was 2 doors south, to the point where all 97 guests at the hotel at that time were evacuated. But there was no fire damage to the hotel. It was precautionary. Another major building, 1923, the National Guard Armory on Indiana.
Okay.
Which is, of course, today the Park District's
rec center. Yeah.
Rec Center.
Yep.
1925, the Gallagher Business School on Indiana Avenue, which was a 2-story building and had played a large role in training many people in business activities, secretarial and court reporting and business administration. 1928, the next large building, which was the 7-story Volkman building at court between Dearborn and Schuyler. Most of these are gone now. No, not most of them, several of them anyway.
Well, and you've got the arcade building.
I'm just here. 1928, Harry Topping rebuilt, essentially tore down the original arcade building and rebuilt it as a more modern business building. And that's the building that still exists there right now at the corner of Merchant and Schuyler.
But getting back to Hotel Kankakee.
Yes, we've kind of been around the block here.
Yeah. Let me tell you a little bit about it. They had a switchboard, and they had a cigar stand. They had a coffee shop. The Indian Room was of Navajo design, decorations. Picture this. This was a banquet.
This is the Goldroom. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's huge. That's a big, long table you got there. A chandelier.
The Goldroom was the largest space in the hotel, and it was extremely popular for everything from wedding receptions to, as you see here, banquets like this one. This was, I think, a 1928 banquet by one of the companies in town. For many years in the 60s, when I was a reporter at the Journal, I used to cover the service club meetings, the Kiwanis and the Rotary and so forth. Sure. And most of them were held at the Goldroom. Yeah, the lobby was it was a nice lobby, and in addition to the Goldroom, which of course had so many major events, was a small conference room called the Ruby Room, and that was on the second floor right over the entrance. And it has an interesting significance because you could actually, if it were still there, you could probably put up a plaque saying the birthplace of Kankakee Community College.
No, really? I did not know
the original KCC board meetings, when it had been approved by the referendum and so forth, and they were beginning to set the plans of where it would be and how it would be built and what it would offer, were held in the the Ruby Room. It was a very small room. It probably had a capacity for 15, 20 people around a big table, and that was about it. And again, that was one of the places I covered when I was a reporter.
So you were stuffed in there with all the other people and
right. Merlin Carlock, for example, one of the original board members, and the original board member who was probably the reason why it was held there was Ralph Francis, who was the owner of the hotel.
That would make sense. Yeah. Wow.
So it was like today we have business-oriented hotels. They have desks and computer hookup and all the modern technology of the day for people who still do that. So this was a combination of that type of an environment for business people to come through and have business rooms and have an area. I read they have tables and chairs and kind of like a desk areas where they can set up and look over their materials if they need to. And then the other part was the bar and the banquet rooms and the coffee shop and everything that you would need to plan banquets and wedding receptions and meetings. So it catered to kind of both areas. And it was very modern and on trend. Probably a little ahead of its time. What time?
Yeah, and didn't it have a pool or potential for a pool, but was never built? Or am I thinking of something else?
Not that I've ever heard.
No, it did not have a
swimming pool. No.
Okay.
Here's a postcard from the 1920s.
That's beautiful.
Developing. It's a good-looking building.
Yeah, it really was. And just looking at it, and I could be way off, but I feel like the closest piece of architecture that currently exists in downtown Kankakee that's anywhere close to this is probably the county building, right? Because that looks
City National,
the old City National Bank, which is now the county, the Kankakee County.
Somewhat.
Some of the architecture reminds me of what we're seeing now of Hotel Kankakee.
Yeah,
a little bit with the terracotta and so forth, and
which was very common in architecture at that time in the 1920s.
The county building, or the former City National Bank, they put a relatively 1950s modern facade on the first two floors, which, to my mind, destroyed it from an architectural standpoint.
There's a lot of controversy about that, a lot of opinions when they added that.
Jory was talking about the Goldroom and the sort of, what it was. It was the major event space for banquets in town, and the capacity of 200 people, which is pretty good. Well, I don't know how many people were in that picture we showed, but they were often set up either as large tables or little tables here and there. There were a couple of dinners or major receptions and events that were held there. For example, in November 1935, Amelia Earhart was the guest at a banquet there, or actually at a dinner there, and then later spoke at the Armory to a very large crowd. In December 1945, local fellow who went under the stage name of David Bruce was given a surprise birthday party in the Goldroom. He was in town from his endeavors in Hollywood.
I've never heard that one.
Oh, haven't you? Yeah.
I knew about Amelia. I knew about that one.
Well, David Bruce was a very prominent. He was a sort of second-level actor in Hollywood. I'm trying to think of the name of the swashbuckling, pirate sort of thing. And he was the second banana to whoever and I can't think of the name in it.
And not to be confused with anyone listening to this and thinking of the auto dealership in Bourbonnais called David Bruce for many years. Right. I don't think there's any connection.
No, there's not.
If you're thinking, David Bruce, wasn't that the dealership? And no, that's completely different. No connections.
David Bruce was actually Marden McBroom. And he was the son of the family that owned the McBroom's restaurant on North Schuyler Avenue for many, many years, a very powerful political family in town. And also two young fellows who were, in 1938, December 1938, there was a big banquet and later a reception for two young fellows named Alan Bergner and Harry Stella. Alan Bergner was the quarterback for the Annapolis, the Naval Academy football team, and Harry Stella was the captain of the West Point Army football team. The two had been classmates at Kankakee High School and played together in football, and went on. And they were named quarterbacks for the Army-Navy game in 1939. The reason for the 1938 event was trying to build a boom of opinion and pressure to get somebody to reschedule the Army-Navy game from Philadelphia. I believe it was always held to Chicago because of the connection. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do that. And I don't remember who won the game. I apologize.
I'm sure we could look it up. Someone's probably listening to this and looking it up right now.
I'm sure they are. I know I've written a couple of columns about it various times, but I can't remember who the story.
Yeah, that's still a very big deal to this day when those two teams play each other. So it's a long-standing tradition. So yeah, there's been quite a few prominent people and events that have passed through that hotel.
Oh yeah,
that was the place.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was for several years because even I've heard my relatives talk about how it was just a place to go for lunch.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you were downtown or just wanted to do something nice downtown, you went there for lunch or maybe for dinner. You know, so
Let me tell you really quick about the fire.
Oh yeah.
Well, it happened in the basement or one of the kitchens. They had 3 kitchens. One of them, there's an explosion in there, and a few people were injured, and the fire broke out. This was 1937 on the bottom floor, and it went up to maybe a couple floors. But then people in the upper floors had no idea because it didn't. The fire department.
It's that fireproof hotel.
right, it's a fireproof hotel. You don't have to worry
and so
about
the people up above are like, "What's going on down there?" You know, so that it just damaged the first 2 floors. But it seems that after that incident, not right away, it took several decades, but then it slowly, for many factors, went downhill. And then we'll get into why it did.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to me, after reading through material of the timeline, that after this happened, things kind of, and they tried to replace, pay for replacement of materials and get it back in order, etc. That the costs were really, for the hotel, were really going up. The economy was going down, up, down, up, down. Of course, that doesn't help any business, but things like that really made the business kind of go downhill in a slower fashion. But the fire seems to be the one thing that was the most
triggering kind of thing.
Yeah, that's where it all kind of started. So
that's my personal opinion of reading it. That's not fact, but just from reading the materials.
Okay.
Impression that I get.
One of the things that contributed to the decline of the hotel and of downtown hotels in general, and beginning after World War II, people were more mobile. A lot of people, up through the war, didn't generally drive cars. After the war, you had a lot of motor traffic. People had spendable money. The economies generally were booming. And so they would get in the car and go off to a vacation somewhere. And to meet the needs of those travelers, motels were built, motor hotels, accessible right from the highway, and not fancy, not a lot of folderol. Some of the cases were actually cabins, just a row of 20 cabins after another. There's still a few of those around.
Oh, yeah.
And this really was caused a real lack of business for downtown hotels, mostly in the smaller cities. It didn't affect Chicago's downtown hotels very much, or large communities like that, because there's still so much business activity and
Tourists
so forth.
and whatnot.
And tourism. But for a short time, and I think this was probably in the early 70s, the hotel was briefly rebranded as the Kankakee Motor Inn.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Just because they thought by putting motor in it would kind of...
Exactly.
Okay.
And actually, in late 1970s, there were advertisements in real estate journals and so forth of looking for a buyer for the hotel. Didn't find any takers, and it finally moved along till, let's see, probably...
Motor Inn.
Yes, there we are, Kankakee Motor Inn.
So this was the 1970s that they made it the Kankakee Motor Inn.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Still the same kind of thing.
I haven't seen that brochure for many years.
I've never seen that. I didn't even know that existed.
Kankakee River on the front.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jack's like, man, I got to see that.
I find the greatest stuff in these files.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a quote.
I think I wrote this.
Oh, did you really?
There was a advertising agency called Creative Resources in Kankakee. A fellow named Larry Morris. Larry's still in town, retired. And he and I worked on a lot of projects together. He was the concept and design guy, and I wrote the copy. And when I looked at that, that looks like one of Larry's, designs. And then I looked and saw the Creative Resources slug on
cool.
it.
Wow.
And
what a small world.
In 1982, they were interviewed who owned it, and it said it started to hurt us when Howard Johnson, remember the Howard Johnson, and Holiday Inn opened.
That's right. Howard Johnson's out on the east end of Court Street, and the Holiday Inn on Route 50, or 54 at that time, I think.
Yes, yeah. But I do remember reading that there was times where they turned the water off
because of non-payment of
non-payment.
Taxes.
They were way behind on taxes.
Taxes. I have an article on that.
They had a few permanent residents there. I'm trying to think of the name of the one of the oldest families. They owned a hardware store on Court Street. Gone blank. Sorry. Anyway, one of the 90-year-old man who was the last member of that family lived at the hotel for many, many years.
Swanell?
Swanell, yes, thank you. Swanell, yes.
Swanell. Yeah.
Yes,
exactly. So Swanell was one of the last people living in there?
I believe so, yeah. I don't remember when he died, but I know there was a lengthy interview with him on his 90th birthday, and he had been living there as a resident for quite some time already at that time.
Huh.
Okay, 1981. The IRS reached a deal with the hotel owners for $47,000 in back taxes.
Wow. That's a lot of money back
They were in trouble.
And so they put a lien on it and actually put a sign out front, seizure or closure or whatever. But then they took the sign down as soon as
they settled up.
An agreement.
So at this time, they were barely chugging along. Yeah. And this is when, a lot of industry was leaving Kankakee.
Oh, the 80s, were devastating.
Yeah, so probably a lot of the people that were frequenting there probably were, like as you said, permanent residents and things like that, and that's quite a few rooms to fill in a downtown area where
because the 80s we lost the Roper building, we lost A.O. Smith, and that a lot of the people who might have patronized that hotel traveling in for business purposes were not coming.
Right.
Actually, I'm not sure exactly when the hotel closed. Do you find a year when they actually closed down?
91, I believe.
Okay, well, it was demolished in 91. I know that.
When it closed.
Yeah. Okay.
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
Okay. In 1991, the hotel was torn down, and at the same time, across the street, the Alden's department store, which was also a major part of downtown,
Farmers Market. That's what
where the farmers market is now.
Okay. So
Alden,
just literally just across the street.
across the street from each other, yeah.
Okay.
And the was part of a downtown redevelopment project that gave us lots of parking lots.
So that's when all that started. So
Right.
would that have included the Luna Theater too, or had that been torn down?
See, I think it
before
probably
then?
did, yeah, because I don't remember exactly when the Luna was torn down, but probably so because it was at the
It was
south
in that
end,
block.
south end of the Alden's building,
Yeah.
and there was, I think at that time, just vacant space the rest of the block. So today, the hotel site, of course, is the parking lot for the public library.
Well, when things started to get bad, the residents of the hotel, the services that they received, such things as like they stopped supplying toilet paper, facial tissues, cups, and soap. They stopped the cleaning service. They closed
Can you
the
not have a
coffee
cleaning
shop,
service?
the coffee shop, the meals, things, the switchboard, night person or day person at the counter, in the lobby. They stopped these things little by little because they just couldn't afford to keep
They had all those
going.
back
And so
taxes.
they interviewed some people in 1982, and they when the hotel was for sale, and they bought it for sale, and they bought it. So in that time period, and these people had to find other places to go, and they're like, "Where are we going to go?" And some of them didn't have very much notice, which corresponds to today. Sometimes that happens today, of people being kicked out of a building on short notice, and they're not sure where they're going to go.
Yeah.
So
when the building, Hotel Kankakee, was purchased by the city, correct? And then
Yes.
the city tore it down.
yes,
Right.
Do we know how much the city purchased it for?
I don't know unless Jory
I
has it.
read it, and now I
Because it was probably in foreclosure,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yes.
By that point.
Yeah, it was empty, closed up.
Yeah.
And
So let me
yes,
see here.
I'm not sure. I know there was a lot of downtown redevelopment, quote, tearing down things. The building to the north, which was, I think, Walgreens at
Okay,
that
there we
time
go.
and so forth.
Okay.
There she go.
Agreement reached in the okay, so Hotel Kankakee to be sold eventually raised as part of a $10.5 million downtown office development. So I don't know, $600,000 for the building.
Oh, okay.
And Franco said he was willing to offer slightly more than 50% of that figure. Mr. Franco was part of the Heritage Development and Construction, who developed downtown into parking lots.
Right, because after they raised the hotel, that's when they built the executive center.
Yes.
Right, up at the
yes.
northern end of the lot.
Yes.
Yep. And that was 1981.
Yeah, because that had been a whole, some major shops on the south side of Court Street between there and Dearborn. Then eventually the PNC Bank occupied a portion of that as well after they tore down the Volkman building.
Right. Yeah, the Vulcan building was raised before that. Before
that.
91, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the PNC building was built before the executive center was.
Right. Yeah.
It makes me sad when I see old buildings in downtown, especially ones with great architecture. And Kankakee had great architecture.
Yes. And we still do, thankfully.
And we still do.
Yes.
But the old buildings, really old, we have to talk about that someday, are
Yes.
really, were genuinely unique. But it makes me sad
Yes.
to see old buildings go.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I would assume at that point of the Hotel Kankakee's age, it probably wasn't maintained well because they didn't have the money.
Didn't have the money to do it.
maintain
That's right.
Right.
And it probably, either was past the point of no return. I'm just imagining it's either that or it would just take millions upon millions of dollars to completely renovate.
I would say probably more of a point of no return.
Probably a point of no return, yeah.
And raising it was probably, in the long run, the better.
Yes.
Sometimes that is true. Raising a building is
it's the only solution, only practical solution.
So
it's a blessing and a curse, because if you think about it now, if we didn't have all those parking spaces and parking lots now, all those wonderful events that take place throughout the year, we wouldn't have that space to do so.
That's right.
So it's like
the development of the farmers market in that area, and then over a block away the festival
square. So it's just like
glad to see some other things too. I just noticed not too long ago seeing something about some redevelopment work in my favorite downtown building, the Gallagher building. Not the Gallagher, I'm sorry, the Granger building.
The Granger building, yes. Yeah, there's they're called the Venue that's being, I think, going to open soon, actually.
Very good.
Like a jazz club.
Okay, and they're also, I think, remodeling and offering for rentals apartments upstairs.
Well, I think they're already renting one of them out, if not more.
But the architecture, the facade of that building is lovely because of the reddish brown stone, and of course the green oxidized copper fittings and so forth. I've just often felt that's one of the most beautiful downtown buildings.
And it's very unique.
Yes.
It's very unique. Yeah, I agree. That's one of my favorites too. So
I want to touch for a moment on the competition, one of the part-time competition for the hotel, which was the Lafayette Hotel. Lafayette on the west side of Schuyler, it was... Well, let's see, it wasn't on the corner because the corner was the Kankakee Federal Savings, but the next building down was the Lafayette Hotel, and that was opened on February 1, 1900 by a man named Tim Fortin, who was the Fortin family, of course, through the years, very popular, very prominent here. For almost 70 years, it was one of the major hotels in the city. In 1925... I think probably because they were faced with coming competition from the Hotel Kankakee, they added a fourth story, bringing their capacity to 139 rooms. It was an interesting building, and again, for a time there, from the 1920s through the 60s and so forth, there was a pretty lively competition between the two. But the Lafayette Hotel closed and was demolished in 1968.
So
in
what's
fact, the building we're in right now possibly is partly covered. That, and the building next door to the south is where the site was.
Oh, no way!
But this building, I'm not sure the actual history of this building, but it could be including part of what had been the site of the Lafayette Hotel, because it was a good-sized building.
Yeah, I did not realize that. I have been wanting to completely look up the history of this building and when it was built. I was told it was the 1950s, but I don't know if that's accurate.
The J.C. Penney store.
Right.
And that has the 50s kind of look to the facade.
Yeah.
And might have been, yeah. Well, it would have been later than that, though, because it was the building. Well, depending on whether this building was part of the footprint of the old Lafayette Hotel or not, that would have been later.
We got a mystery to solve.
That's right. Somebody at the land people might know that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure we could figure that out easily.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I have a picture of this block where the Lafayette Hotel would have been, and on the corner there's grass right now.
Yes.
Where
the Snyder's family and the first Kankakee Federal Savings.
And it is looking south, and on the corner, Merchant and Schuyler. And this whole block is there. It's really early. So I will bring that picture next time.
Okay.
And I'll show
Please
you
do.
what this block.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
And this building might have been, it was this, I don't know, this particular, but a building was here because the whole block was intact in this picture. But how they redid it or whatever, came a little bit later.
Yes.
And Penny's was definitely in the early days.
Yeah.
Downtown.
Yeah, the Title and Trust building next door was definitely.
It looks 1960s or later.
Yeah. It was definitely the major part of the Lafayette site, but I'm not sure that it extended further
In
south.
fact, I have this in like 3 or 4 different same view periods because Schneider kept upgrading and upgrading.
That's right. Yes.
So I can show you in about 3 or 4 different pictures this block that we are on. So I will do that. I'll dig them on the archive.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, I've always been, as far as I know, the oldest thing that's been in the building we're currently sitting in is J.C. Penney's. So
Right. It
I
was
don't
built
know.
for J.C. Penney, and
Right.
then was the Love Shop. And
yes,
Yeah.
right. So that's the oldest thing I know. So
Yep.
it would be interesting to find out if any part of this land we're currently on was a part of the hotel or not.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Maybe somebody at Title and Trust Company can come up
they
with
might.
that.
Yeah, they might know, or maybe Bob from the Love Store. He might.
Oh, yeah,
know.
he might know.
I don't
That's right.
know, but
Oh, I've got a bit of local trivia that relates to the Lafayette Hotel. We discussed it a little bit before we put.
yeah, we did. That's right.
Many people looking on Court Street, where Lori's Diner is between Indiana and the alley that is part of, it used to be Dearborn, see a hanging sign there that says Lafayette Restaurant and wonder, wait a minute, is it Lafayette Restaurant? Is it Lori's? What is it? Well, it's currently Lori's, but it was at one time the Lafayette Restaurant because the Antros family, which ran the Lafayette Restaurant in the Hotel Lafayette, and this large hanging sign was on the front of the building. When the building was being torn down, they salvaged the sign and moved it to the space where their new restaurant was, which now is Lori's Diner.
I'm so glad they kept the sign.
I
You
am
know,
too.
It's just a nice way to remember what used to be.
That's
you
right.
know, so-
Kind of like the Turk Furniture sign.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I suspect one of these days will get torn down.
I hope not.
I hope not either.
I want to sign a petition.
That is the greatest.
Actually, I
landmark.
think there is a petition or something out there that's like something about keeping the Turk furniture sign up there forever.
Yes.
I'd be fine with maybe either keeping the Jaffe drug sign there too,
That
or
too,
at least
yeah.
making sure that lives somewhere.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
because the Jaffe drug sign is also,
Yeah.
although that needs some work on it, you can
Yes.
see it's really starting to.
Fall apart.
We also have
Yeah.
a brick in our museum collection from Hotel Kankakee.
Okay,
Oh yeah,
good.
we have some of the terracotta.
Yep.
Some of the terracotta.
I wondered because when recently, so if you can picture this in your mind, right in front of the executive center where the public library is, and of course the parking lot, they recently redid the sidewalk there, and they put some nice swings there
Right.
and,
Oh,
and
yes.
things like that. And when they were doing that project, I think it was a year ago, they were when they were doing digging, they were still finding bricks from Hotel Kankakee, I guess.
Right.
So, and it made me wonder when they were doing that project, and I think it was Alderman Dave Barron who brought it up he posted it on Facebook or something. And I was like, I hope someone brought these to the museum or that the museum already has some, because I was like, that's really cool that, they're digging that up and they found old bricks.
I know. I know about, I think maybe 6 feet of the terracotta design that was on either between the first and second floor or at the top. And they're located in the, if you know where the newspaper exhibit is,
Yes.
the window looking into the space, the open space out there. There are a number of items in them, and there is a line of the terracotta ornament from the Hotel Kankakee.
That's great. I'm glad that the museum has some of those because I wasn't sure. So that's good to know. People can go to the museum and see that. And of course, that's always the whole point of doing these episodes with you guys anyway, is just to get people out to the Kankakee County Museum or even the French Heritage Museum and just see some of this history that we are talking about.
That's right.
And ask those questions. And I know, Jory, you always put out there, and even Jack too, is anyone ever hears this and they have questions about anything history related, they're always welcome to reach out to you guys.
That's right.
So,
Yes. The folders that I bring to, I pull just the specific materials that I know will be relevant to the conversation. But most of the files that I have at the museum are like thick, really thick. So
Yes.
a lot of things, I just read through them the night before and I just pull. They're not online. That makes me happy because I like doing these. I like going through things by hand. But I'm happy to go through things for you and give you whatever you want so you don't have to.
Yeah.
But yes, if anybody has any other questions or want to do a more in-depth study on this, I'm happy to help you answer any questions or any topic in Kankakee County history.
Yes.
Just give me a call or email and let me know what you're interested in.
Mhm.
And I will do all the busy work for you.
That's it.
That's my pleasure. And that's
Jory
my
is an
specialty.
incredible researcher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she is.
I go through a file very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I speed read because I know what I'm looking for. So you don't have to. So don't worry. You don't have to. I'll do it
Yeah.
for you.
And always encourage people to check out Jack Klasey's column in the Daily Journal, every weekend edition as well. So you always do a great job on that.
And we
as well.
have, he has given me binders, a copy of every article.
Oh, cool.
So
And
if
all the
anybody
research
wants
material also.
to
Yeah, that's
look
important.
through his past articles on different subjects, I have all of them from 2016 on. So anyone's interested in going through those, I have those as
Okay.
well.
That's good to know.
Mhm.
That's great to know.
And he always gives me great information
Yeah.
to put in my files.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both once again for being on, Jack and Jory. And if anyone wants to learn more, they can always go to KankakeeCountyMuseum.com. You can also follow on Facebook and Instagram at Kankakee County Museum as well.
yes,
Thank you for having us
thank
today.
you.
It's a pleasure. That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.
This river carries